as he enters from stage right, Aaron Schatz is our special guest. And while Jimmy smoozes along, I will tell you that. Please, this is what. Thank you. He said, "This is what I do." Is that correct?
This is what I do, yes. Hi, nice to meet you, my man.
My pleasure.
Hello.
So the editor-in-chief
All right,
of Football Outsiders, and how many years has this been in existence, and how did it begin? Because I know you're a local guy in Framingham.
Yep.
And I know you're a big New England sports fan.
Yes.
So tell us how it all began.
We're in our 12th year now.
That's
I've been doing
fantastic.
this for 12 years. I was basically just a fan back in '02 who had some curious questions about why things were the way they were when the Patriots didn't make the playoffs. And I said, well, when Bill James got started doing baseball stats, all he did was he counted stuff in box scores and sporting news, so I'm going to just do the same thing. So I started counting numbers and writing some articles and coming up with some stats, and launched the website in August of 2003, and by February of 2004, it was my full-time job.
Fantastic.
Aaron, what was the
Congratulations on that
opposition
success.
at the time? Because you always have doubters. You always have people saying, you can't do this, Aaron. Nobody's going to buy this or whatever.
First of all, an honest truth is that I started, the first ideas that I started with were trying to disprove Ron Borges.
You heard that, Ron.
Because so Ron was writing in 2002 that the Patriots were going to miss the playoffs because they couldn't establish the run. But at the same time, Ron was writing that the Oakland Raiders were the best team in the league and they were going to win the Super Bowl. And their running back was Charlie Garner, who ran the ball less than any starting running back in the league. So I said 2 and 2 here doesn't make 4. This doesn't make, you can't have both these things be true. So the first thing I ever did was I went back and started counting up running carries in the first quarter of games to figure out whether it actually led to winning or not, which it doesn't. And it kind of all grew from there. So once I started out, I mean, the other side was always, the same people who didn't like the idea of doing stat analysis in baseball and basketball and whatever, but when I started doing this, the book Moneyball had just come out. So all of a sudden, people's eyes were open to the concept. Their minds were open, and they were looking for the idea in other sports. And here we were doing it. And the other thing is that from the very beginning of doing this, I was really determined to not create that sort of stats versus scouting battle that existed in the baseball world.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So like when the baseball guys started doing this in the late 70s, they acted like they knew everything.
Yep.
Like they came out like, we know everything.
And
people who run teams are morons.
Right.
That's right.
All right.
But they had a reason, and they had a mathematical formula to do that.
Right. But we've also
opinion.
learned since then that people who run teams were not completely morons. For example, that if you try,
they're not completely morons.
For example, right, the stats people started to project guys from their
Right.
minor league stats without considering how the human body develops, which scouts understand, right? Okay, that how a guy does when he's 19 at single A ball doesn't necessarily translate to the majors.
No, project.
Because his body will develop, right? Okay, so for football, I learned very quickly that teams actually were a lot more analytical in the NFL than people gave them credit for. They had to be because of the salary cap. So scouting and stats work together. For me, it was always more about not that the teams were run by idiots, but that most color commentators were idiots, to be honest.
Careful.
And, well, I'm sorry, were you ever doing color commentary for CBS?
No. Yes, they're
Fox,
idiots. You're right.
But, I mean,
Yes,
beat writers, too,
I
at
wasn't
the time.
there.
Right.
Although beat writers are so much better now. Beat writers are so much more
Yes, they are.
informed now than they were a dozen years ago. Color commentators, not so much, except
That's
for Collinsworth.
That's interesting that you say that.
One of the
first
I
questions.
like this dynamic of how.
Can I ask
how
a
you
question?
finally? Yes, you can. Calm down. Plenty of time. He's not going anywhere. I got him anchored to the chair.
All right.
Thank you very much. He's here.
All right.
As
You need to
mentioned,
get
the
your iced tea.
dynamic of being able to finally meet that happy medium where we can get along. Scouts, stat people, we can make this thing work. So did that blow it up? Is that when they knew this guy knows what he's doing?
That helped a lot, I think, and also that I had people from teams talking to me fairly early on I got to know Jim Schwartz when he was defensive coordinator of the Titans.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I
Good
talked
guy.
to some folks from the Eagles from the very beginning, from the 49ers. So, people from the league started paying attention to what we were doing fairly soon. And now I have a lot of contacts all over the league and people that I can talk to about things. And you also have to remember that in football, because you've got a smaller sample size, you don't want to fall in love with stats off a very small sample.
Right.
So the way, I usually consider things is that if the stats say that what the conventional wisdom is might be a little wrong, then there's reason to believe that the stats might not be right. If they're telling you that conventional wisdom is really, really wrong, then you probably want to reconsider the conventional wisdom. It's like you want to look for where the gap between what stats tell you and what conventional wisdom tells you is as large as possible.
Interesting, because one of the things you hear a lot on, speaking of people that really are out there, sports talk show hosts, they always throw the line out, oh, this is the number one defense. Oh, this is the number one defense against the run, against the pass. But those statistics don't work. I mean, if you talk to football guys, they will say that doesn't mean anything because you don't know when they occurred. They don't know. And are there statistics that you found that are more reliable than what we hear about a lot?
All right, so we'll start with the basics, which is if you do not even want to do anything advanced, okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Completely ditch the NFL's official ranking of teams by total yardage. It's unbelievably
Thank you.
stupid. Right? Because if you are a good team, the other team is stuck passing the ball to try to get back into the game late.
Right. Yeah.
So you're not considering who the opponent is, but you're also, you're not even considering how many passes they had to throw. So even if you only want to use conventional stats, the first big step you can take is to look at yards per play rather than just total yards, and for passing, net yards per play to make sure that you incorporate the importance of pass rush and sacks. But obviously we've gone a lot past that. So the stats we have, the main metric we have is called DVOA, which stands for something complicated because that's how stats work.
Did you go to MIT?
No.
Where did you go to
I
college?
went to Brown.
Oh, well, that's all right.
Oh, you're
hang out.
It's no problem.
That's all right.
Complicated.
It's because it couldn't get into tough. I get it.
No MIT. I rock it James Devlin style.
Excuse me. Please forgive
James
me for
Devlin
interrupting.
style.
Did you have anything to do with this?
No.
The comment.
Now, if we...
But I'll bet you I had a
human
professor. I bet you I have a professor who
that
was
worked on
involved
this,
in this.
right?
Yeah.
If we can put an object
on to your
on
answer.
a comet,
That was one of the really
on a
easy
comet
classes you could take if you
flying
didn't know science.
40,000
and you wanted an
miles
A.
an hour.
Yeah, it was
I got
awesome.
it. I got it.
40,000 miles an
I was
hour through
there.
Space. We're getting there.
Dude,
Go
you
ahead.
don't understand. At the Combine 8 or 9 years ago, Zach Diassi and I were sitting talking about the classes we had taken to try to get easy A's.
That's funny.
Easy A's at Brown. You're trying to get an easy A at Brown.
Well, it happens.
Well, yeah, you
The
know,
toughest thing is getting in.
second semester of his senior year, he had to spend the whole time lifting weights and getting ready for the Combine.
Okay.
So second semester of my senior year, I was working at 2 radio stations simultaneously. So
That's
I was
hard
looking
work.
for easy classes.
Excuse me. That's hard work.
It takes
That's
a lot
the
of your
hard
time.
work.
We're in this business. That's hard work.
That's right.
So, we
talking
created
about-
this stat
Go ahead.
that looks at success on every single play. All right, and it adjusts it based on a baseline that's based on the situation and the opponent to look at how good teams really are at getting the yardage they need in those situations. For example, if it's 3rd and 10 and your quarterback, scrambles for 2 yards, that's a nothing. But if it's 3rd and 1 and Tom Brady sneaks it for 2 yards, that's a huge success. So we incorporate that. Running against San Francisco is hard. Running against Indianapolis, I don't know if you saw, is easy.
It was for the Patriots
I'm not
last night,
saying-
and Jonas
hey,
great.
Continue, Aaron. I tried to tell him that. I said,
Last
please.
night, in the stat that we do for total value rather than value per play, Jonas Gray last night had the 6th best running value before opponent adjustments of any game of the last 25 years.
25. Wow.
Yes. After opponent adjustments, he didn't even have the most running value of the day.
Interesting.
Jamal Charles
Jamal
did,
Charles said it.
because the Colts are so easy to run on.
Thank you.
And by the way, the football guys know this. This is
Yeah.
why when I listen to my friends on Sports Talk Radio, I cringe a lot because they're using stuff that just doesn't make any sense to back up their arguments.
Yeah, and also people.
Not all of
listen,
them.
the other thing I've learned about football is people think very short term. So 1 or 2 games mind, and I've learned that you really do need to look longer term at things. So we all overreact to everything. I mean, even here we're overreacting. The Patriots are not going to be running for 200 yards on everybody the rest of the year. But this is nothing like living in Philadelphia, where
Lord.
Mark Sanchez went from nobody to the savior to nobody in the space of 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
But is it every week?
He had a short life, Aaron.
And
A
every
very
week,
short life.
and every week in the NFL is truly a season, and the Patriots do get that right.
That in one way, that's true. In the other way, every week in the NFL is like a series in baseball, and you don't overreact when the Red Sox lose 2 out of 3,
Right.
because you know there's another 3 coming up.
Right.
Got it.
And people in the NFL fans and analysts tend to completely overreact to games in the NFL, even though, you know, an upset is an upset, and it may show you something about a team that needs fixing or something that's, but, you know, not every upset shows some kind of grand blueprint. A great example of this is Cincinnati, right? I mean, 2 weeks ago, Andy Dalton comes out and he throws every throw like he's trying to hit a halo 3 feet above the receiver's head, and 1 week later, and he was the best quarterback of the week. in New Orleans.
And
I mean,
he was the worst the week before, too.
yeah, you can't overestimate one game. It's still only one game.
That's right.
Aaron Schatz, the creator of Football Outsiders, is our special guest. And Aaron, you know, there are so many questions that so many people would have. You hear the term stat geek. You hear all of these other terms to describe guys like you. And you sit around with a whole staff of people and say, look, I don't care what they call me, as long as I know that I'm on point. When did you feel, right from the beginning, that you were seriously on point on a week-to-week basis?
I mean, when I started talking to people in the league by the end of the second year of doing this, by the end of the first year of doing this, actually, I felt like I had some good stuff going on. You know, the stat geek thing is, you know, it's not like I sit at home playing with numbers all day and have no personal life. People want to imagine people who write on the internet as like living in their mom's basement. But I am the prototypical guy who never played the game, and I'm very honest about that. And so when I realized this was going to be my employment, I really immersed myself in watching film and learning things from a scouting perspective to try to have holistic analysis that where the stats and scouting really informed each other. Mm-hmm. You know, you can learn a lot about what kind of schemes a team runs from the stats and from the
tendencies.
You know, from knowing what schemes they run, you can find out why the stats are that way. So it all works together. Mm-hmm. And I think it was pretty quick that I realized that we had some new ideas that no one else was really doing, and we were doing some good stuff with them. You know, that being said, the first year I did this, we had our first team that we said was overrated that went on a run in the playoffs anyway and made us look stupid, which was Carolina.
Yeah.
And we've had that happen multiple times, but part of that is just there's randomness. And people like to, you know, overestimate the importance of randomness, but there is randomness. And sometimes the 20th best team in the league is going to go 9-7 and sneak into the playoffs. And unfortunately, people around here know too well upset a team that they would have lost to, you know, 7 or 8 out of 10 times. So that doesn't necessarily mean the analysis is wrong. Like when Baltimore lost 4 of their last 5 a couple years ago, and then went on to win the Super Bowl, that doesn't mean that analysis of Baltimore going into the playoffs was wrong. Everything's about probabilities. The probability that they were going to win it all was still low. You have to congratulate them for doing the things that it takes to win. I mean, stat people like me, when it comes to the future, we talk a lot about probabilities and you know, that certain things are not likely to repeat themselves. When you talk about the past, though, everything that happened.
Yep.
So like when you think about the concept of clutch play, a lot of times whether a guy was clutch does nothing to predict at all whether he's going to be clutch in the future.
Got that right.
So that's right. But it also doesn't change the fact that he was clutch in the past. So like, for example, I think that's something that should be considered for the Hall of Fame, how clutch a guy was, like Vinatieri, for example, even though it doesn't mean that in the future those players would be any more clutch.